Hi everyone. If you are currently or have recently been a university student, you will almost certainly be aware of all the mental health initiatives that are promoted and funded on campus. There are also many news stories written about the student mental health crises on university campuses and how we are seeing rising rates of depression, anxiety, panic disorder, and suicide among the student population. So in this video, I'm not taking any kind of psychological or psychiatric perspective on these issues. I will purely be commenting on the trends I observe in student culture as it relates to the discourse around mental health. So how students and the university community are talking about mental health. So I fully recognize that mental health is a complex and sensitive field that has just kind of opened up for people to talk about. It used to be stigmatized, we didn't talk about it. So keep in mind the boundary I have set for this video. I'm only talking about student mental wellness culture, not mental illness in general. To get an idea of what I'm going to go into here, here's an article about the University of Waterloo who are hiring more counselors. And that's totally fine. But the student who organized the protest to get more mental health services says something really interesting in the article. We believe University of Waterloo needs to reevaluate its brand because it asks us to innovate at the cost of our mental and physical health and leads us to isolate ourselves because of the individualistic and competitive culture. I'm not denying there may be some truth to that statement, but I think the real problem is when she bashes the competitive culture of university. University grades are competitive, and competition is actually a form of fun. So just because you don't like competition, it doesn't mean that other people don't. I like competition and I find it motivating, so why are you trying to take it away from people who might be more like me and find it motivating? So this is the thing with a lot of these people is they know they can't compete, so they want to guilt people into changing the rules of the game to accommodate them. And another very important thing to point out is that a lot of very successful people actually have some sort of mental health issue. So I don't know why some people want to make it seem like if you have a mental illness, it means you can't keep up with everyone else. Because maybe actually someone with a mental health issue will do better than everyone else and end up being more successful. And here's another little story. So a professor sends this email out to their class. Hello everyone, your essay grades are on MLS. I am stunned by how good many of the papers were, truly excellent. There were 10 A's. I am not especially quick to give out A's and must say that I have never given out that many in one class of this small size. So those of you who got one really earned it well, congratulations. There were 14 B's, 12 C's, and 1 D. So nothing seems out of the ordinary to me here. I've received many of these types of emails before, but apparently these kinds of emails piss some people off. So a student wrote on this community Twitter board for Wilfrid Laurier University, "Attention profs, don't send emails like this to your students. This kind of garbage is why so many people feel so inadequate about their papers on top of receiving poor grades and start hating themselves. If you want to congratulate the A students, send a separate email." And no, actually, you need to be able to handle the fact that other people in the class did better than you, and it's not the end of the world. Try harder next time. And, the professor sending this email, for the A students, it's a form of recognition and reward for them. So who are you to say that those students don't deserve that recognition and reward? There was also an article in The Atlantic that came out in September called "Teens Are Protesting In-Class Presentations," and it's about high school students who don't want to do in-class presentations because it gives them anxiety. And when I was in high school, in-class presentations gave me anxiety too, but you just eventually get over it. So this is from the article. Students who support abolishing in-class presentations argue that forcing students with anxiety to present in front of their peers is not only unfair because they are bound to underperform and receive a lower grade, but it can also cause long-term stress and harm. Well, if the assignment is to do a presentation and you underperform, then yeah, you're going to get a lower grade. So let's say you're bad at public speaking, but your strength is writing, then at least you'll get some good grades on your writing assignments. You win some, you lose some. You can't always just try to get out of doing things you don't want to do under the guise of mental health. And although that article was specifically about high school students, you see the same kind of rhetoric with university students too. So it kind of seems sometimes like people have forgotten what the university is for. It's not a place where you go to hang out and feel good. It actually reminds me of a case earlier this year where a female student at Cornell University she did her thesis presentation in a bra and underwear in protest because originally she was wearing cut-off jean shorts, and her professor asked her if that's what she would really wear during a presentation and that her shorts were too short. And the syllabus for that course asks students to dress appropriately for the persona they will present, because the course was called Acting in Public, Performance in Everyday Life. But the student apparently couldn't handle the idea that she should dress professionally for a presentation, and decided to do this presentation in a bra and underwear and film it. And then, of course, this is from the school newspaper article about this incident. After her presentation, the student hosted an informal roundtable with other students on methods of diversity and inclusion training for faculty. Of course she did. So I'm not suggesting that this student is mentally unwell. I'm just saying that she seems to not understand the standards of university-level education. So there's this movement among students to change campus culture, to make it less competitive, and to reduce standards, which I see as a major problem. But another major problem I see is how the university community medicalizes and pathologizes relatively normal levels of stress. And I've noticed this for a while now. So what I mean by this is that when you have 2 papers due and a final exam that week, and you're also working part-time and maybe there's something else going on in your life, like you're having relationship problems, then yeah, you're going to be stressed. But just because you're in this particularly stressful situation, it doesn't mean that you have an anxiety disorder or you are clinically depressed and you need pills for this. Today, that's not what a lot of young people think. They think that because they're not feeling 100% good at all times, there is something wrong with them. And so I have an example of this medicalization and pathologizing of stress. This news story: University of Waterloo students to get mental health first aid kits this fall. Basically, first-year students will get a panic, anxiety, and stress support kit that contains a squeezable stress star, earplugs, a sleeping mask, a pack of gum, and 25 flashcards with steps a person can take when they are experiencing anxiety. So maybe the flashcards are useful, and gum is always nice, but the rest sounds like dollar store stuff that will end up in a landfill. So they handed out 7,100 of these goodie bags this year. So that's 7,100 foam and plastic stress stars ultimately ending up in a landfill or in the ocean. But more seriously, handing this kind of thing out to first-year students will kind of set them up to think, yeah, I'm gonna have mental health issues. I'm gonna have like a panic and anxiety disorder. So it sets them up for it. And it makes them pathologize any relatively normal amount of stress that they might experience. So all I'm saying is that it needs to be more clear that while, yes, some people will need help for their mental health struggles, a lot of people actually don't need help because the stress and anxiety will go away. I need to recognize that it'll go away. And that's not made clear with this kit that is handed out to the first year students. They're encouraged to instantly diagnose and medicalize themselves and go to extremes, like that they have clinical depression and they now need to be prescribed anti-depressants. And similarly to these packets with a foam stress ball star, at the University of Windsor, students got wellness bags that contain slime, bubble wrap, gum, tea, oatmeal cookies, and study tips. There was also a giant piece of bubble wrap available for stomping for those who had a little pre-exam stress to work out. I think this is why corporations and university administrators are all over these mental health initiatives, because it's pretty easy to invest in something where your goal is essentially to just make people feel good by giving them free goodie bags with cookies and gum. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about health and wellness. Living a healthy lifestyle is probably my number one value and interest. But for me, that means living a clean lifestyle. So, in terms of being active, eating healthy, no smoking or drugs, non-toxic products, reducing plastic pollution, etc. So I'm into health and wellness, but real long-term health and wellness, not just needing a stress star and bubble wrap. I do want to make a very crucial point, though, that the conditions for being stressed and depressed and anxious are completely set up for us in today's world. In Canada and in other Western countries, Ties with family and friends are weaker. If you live in an urban setting, chances are you have little to no neighborly connection. When you go out with your friends for dinner, they're probably looking at their phones. Our lives are too fast-paced. In some places, it's quite difficult to access healthy food, though this is more of an issue in the US than in Canada from what I've observed. So food deserts, basically. In most of Canada, it's cold for basically half the year, and it gets dark quite early, so you're not going to be very motivated to leave your house. People don't get enough exercise. Relationships are seen as transient. Friendships seem to be more about how you can benefit yourself rather than help each other in the long term. People are non-committal and unattached. People are loyal to nothing and to no one. People work 5 days a week in jobs where they sit all day. And people are very disconnected from the everyday processes of life. And I think actually what a lot of people fail to recognize is that a huge reason why young people today are drawn to Marxism is because they feel alienated from their labor. They're disempowered. They don't know how to build anything. They don't know how to make anything. They don't really know how to cook. The products they use and clothing they wear in everyday life comes from God knows where. And that's all very discomforting. I know it is for me. So when you are assigned to read Karl Marx in your first year of university, and he's talking about how workers are disconnected from the fruits of their labor, then you're going to like what Marx is saying because he's speaking to you. I think there really is something to be said about feeling disconnected from the material world and not knowing how anything in front of you was really made or how it got there. So I think instead of always encouraging students to think they personally struggle with anxiety or panic or what have you, I want to suggest that maybe you are fine, but the conditions of the modern world are such that they can be anxiety-inducing and depressing. And I can already anticipate that I'm going to get a lot of comments saying, oh, what do you know? Like, you don't have a psychology degree. You're not a psychiatrist. Like, you're not qualified to talk about this. And again, like I stated at the start, I'm only speaking about the culture of student wellness on campus. And I think something also to consider is how there seems to be, like with many other things, there seems to be a correct way to think about mental illness and mental wellness. And so you wouldn't really get professionals in the field and experts in the field expressing what I'm expressing. And again, because it's easier to just prescribe people with something and tell them they have an illness than explaining to them everything that's wrong with the world, everything that's wrong with modernity. With this medicalizing and pathologizing of stress, it does become hard to trust information about student mental health. So for example, when a professor gets a paper in an hour late after the deadline, and the student sends an email saying, "Hi, I had a panic attack last night, that's why my paper is late, sorry." Well, most professors are just going to take the student's word for it because there's really no way to find out if that panic attack occurred or not. So it's actually a tactic that any student can use to get out of an exam or deadline because there's no real way to prove if it actually happened or not. All you need to do is go to the walk-in clinic, pay $25 to a random doctor you'll never see again, and get a doctor's note. And we can't actually know how much this really happens because professors and instructors and teaching assistants, they can't really say anything about this because it's sensitive information. You can't really talk about students' health openly like that. But, you know, it does happen, and try it, right? All you have to do is say you're having an anxiety or mental health struggle over an assignment, and you'll get your extension. I actually received a Twitter message from someone once with screenshots as proof as well, and it was an email from a professor. So this was the day after Trump was elected in the US, and the students received an email saying something like, "Hello students, I know we had an exam scheduled for tomorrow's class, but I understand that tonight's election was very hard on the mental health of many individuals, so if you'd like to take the exam next week instead, I'll let you do that." And then it turns out way more students than the professor expected took the extra week because when presented with that opportunity, why wouldn't you take the extra week with no strings attached? So all I'm saying is that this is so easily manipulated, and it kind of discounts people who have actual mental health problems, and it causes that distrust because it's hard to know who is actually suffering from a mental health issue and who's just kind of stressed out but is either milking the mental health trend, or they truly think that their stress is extraordinary and it's basically a disorder. And here's another kind of thing you might see online. Universities will push ridiculously insane amounts of work on young human beings to the point that some students feel like ending their lives, and then send you emails like exam season, de-stress yoga, workshop Tuesday at noon, come study with hot chocolate Wednesday at 4 p.m, LMAO. Yeah, university is a lot of work and it can be very overwhelming, but if you feel like ending your life, you could first maybe make some sort of compromise, like taking a lighter course load next semester, or taking a semester off to figure out if you want to stay at university. So these arguments about we need to change university culture or else students are going to end their lives, it is just very drastic. In conclusion, I don't think many people are comfortable openly critiquing this student mental health culture stuff. So I hope I came off as fair and sympathetic, because I am sympathetic. But I also think we need to be able to question these issues and speak openly about our critiques before we pour money into freebie-based initiatives, for example. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing the conversation kind of bounce off from here, hopefully a bit, in the comment section. And I am on PayPal if you want to support my video making. And so thank you to everyone who donates on PayPal, and thank you for all the very kind messages I get on there. See you next time.